Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how I make my time-lapse photography. Let's go! Hi, I'm Adam and welcome to First Man Photography. Before we get into this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a domain name, a website or an online store, then make your next move with Squarespace. So time-lapse photography is a really brilliant way of adding something to the story you're trying to tell. It condenses a large period down into a very small amount of time to really move the story along and cram a lot into that short clip. It's a really effective way of doing transitions, and it's just going to add a lot to your project, whether you're doing video or even if you're just doing stills, because having those moving pictures in your portfolio as a photographer, it can really still add a lot of interest. So I'm going to show you how I create my time lapses, but you can pretty much do it with any camera these days, and there's two ways of doing it. You can either condense a video file down into a short amount of time, or the way I prefer is to capture a series of stills and then stitch them together later on into a video clip. Most cameras these days will have a built-in time-lapse mode. Your phone will have one as well, and that just does the stitching for you and creates a video file at the end. I prefer to do it manually because then you've got the full post-processing control over those image files and you can have the video looking exactly as you please. You can't post-process video in the same way, so you don't have as much control. By doing the still images, you also get the big 4K files, or as big as your camera sensor will allow. It also means that you can then zoom in on that time-lapse as well, adding that extra element of interest. So what gear do we need? Well, firstly, obviously, you're going to need a camera. I normally use the 5D Mark IV that I'm filming on right now, but sometimes I will use my vlogging camera, which is the 800D or the T7i, depending which way you look at it. But the second thing you're gonna need is a tripod. This one is on the GorillaPod here. I've got the other one on the Manfrotto tripod, or you can use something a little bit like this that you just slot your iPhone into as well. Small GorillaPod, big GorillaPod, really doesn't matter what kind of tripod you're using. If you do it like me and you're going to capture the single still images, you're also going to need some kind of way of firing the camera, and we call the device to do that an intervalometer. This Canon 5D Mark IV has that built in, like a lot of the new Canon cameras. Otherwise, you're going to need an intervalometer. All that is just a very cheap piece of gear that looks like that you plug into the camera. You can get them for all different types of camera, DSLRs, mirrorless, that type of thing. And then you just set the number of shots you want on here, and this will fire the camera over a period of time for you. Very cheap. I'll put a link down below to the one I use. Okay, next it comes to actually shooting the time-lapse, and you need to be in manual mode on your camera because you don't want the exposure changing throughout the shot. The scene's going to change and the light in the scene is going to change, but your exposure needs to stay the same. Next, we need to decide what intervals we're going to have, and that'll depend on what you're shooting and how long the total clip is that you're going to create. I use the same recipe for every single time-lapse I do, and I put 3-second intervals in between the shots. I shoot for 10 minutes, that creates about 200 shots, and then I'm working at 25 frames a second with my video, so that creates an 8-second clip. That might not seem like a lot, but it's more than adequate for most of my video projects, and then I'm ready to put the images into the computer and use Lightroom and Photoshop to post-process them. So we're going to do that now. Let's get into the computer. Okay, so here we are into Lightroom, and I have all my images in the grid view here. You actually only need to edit one image and then we synchronize the rest. And this is the image that I've already edited for the sake of time on the tutorial. But if you go into the develop module, make all your normal changes, and then you can just preview them with the little slash button here. And as you can see, I've not made massive differences to that. Just increase the color a bit, increase the shadows a bit to pull out some of that detail. If your time lapse is going to be for a sunrise or a sunset, you want to think about the fact that the light's going to change quite a lot through the time lapse. Here, as you can see, I've purposely underexposed the image because I know it's going to get much brighter. And if we go back to the grid view, we can see from the first image to the second image, it goes from being underexposed to pretty much being overexposed on that last image because I'm shooting straight at the sun. And if you look at the ones in the middle, they're quite nicely exposed. So you want to sort of aim for somewhere in the middle so you get that nice, smooth, natural feeling to your time lapse as the sun is rising or the sun is setting. So once we've developed our image and edited it, you also need to crop it down to 16:9, and you just do that by hitting R, put your crop in, make sure you've got your composition right, and then hit return and crop that down to 16:9 which is your video aspect ratio. Then just go back into the grid view, select the first image, scroll all the way down to the bottom, hold shift down and select the last image, then just click sync settings and it brings up this synchronize setting box. You can pretty much select all of them for this and then just click synchronize and it will add that edit to all of the images and make it smooth and consistent throughout. It takes a little while for the thumbnails to update, but they are now synced. So you can just go ahead and click Control A because we want to export these as JPEGs. I don't want to be working with the raw file, so I'm just going to export the JPEGs that we're then going to put into Photoshop. So I'm just going to right click and go to export, and all I do when I'm exporting them is make sure they have a sequential file number, because when you're putting them into Photoshop, it needs that to combine them. So I've just got that set up as a preset with my resolution. I've got it there as a 4K resolution. That lets me either put them straight into a 4K film, or if I'm using 1080, which I do normally, it then lets me zoom in on that time lapse, just adding that extra element of movement. So just go ahead, export them to JPEG, choose where you're going to do it. I've already exported them, so I'm not going to go through that again. It'll take probably about 20 minutes to export about 200 images. And then once you've done that, we can move into Photoshop. So straight over into Photoshop, and in order to get this to work, you need to go into File and then click Open. Select the folder where you've stored the JPEGs and then scroll down to the first one. So for me, that is Hornby Hill Time-Lapse 101. Click on that and then click Options and click Image Sequence. And that just is telling Photoshop that they're all part of the same time-lapse. It will come up with a frame rate, minus 25 frames per second. As I said earlier, click OK, and then it opens up the time-lapse for you. If you go to Window and click on Timeline, it will open the video timeline at the bottom. You can then click play here to start previewing it. It has to render it first, but that's a good way to preview it. I don't bother though, I just go straight into File and then go to Export and click Render Video. It comes up with this screen. You can see the settings I'm using there. Make sure it's a 4K if that's what you want. Select a place to save it and then just click render, and it'll take a couple of minutes to render that video out. And that's pretty much it. Once you've done that, you're ready to do something with that clip. Okay, so that's created your time-lapse clip. Now you just need to do something interesting with it. You can put it on its own, or you probably want to add it to your story or your video as a whole to really add something to that. I've put together a little 2-minute video for the end of this one that just gives you an example how you can mix it in to lots of different things, put some good music to it, and create a nice little interesting video to engage your audience. So stick around to the end to see that, but please do leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Have you tried it? Have you had trouble with your time lapses? Put it down in the comments and we'll see what we can do to help you out. Please do subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. Also, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com to start your free trial today, and if you go to squarespace.com/firstman, you can get 10% off your first purchase. Stick around till the end for that video, but I'm also going to be putting out a second video this week about hyperlapses. Slightly different to time lapses, actually a lot easier. So check out that short video that'll be coming out on Wednesday. I'm Adam, this is First Man Photography in the studio, out.